Yeah, queerness didn't really come into the picture for me until high school when
What was your queer awakening? I'm just curious.
I started going on Tumblr.
Oh my god, lesbians unite.
It was I think I was grade 7 or 8, 2007, 2008.
Diva, Tumblr got us all. Come on.
I was just gay.
You were just gay, period.
Yeah.
My name is Ash Thompson.
My name is Harper Hugo.
My name is Brent.
Yes, my name is Michael Fair.
Mabuhay! My name is Melinda Verga.
We are Drag Out the Love, and you're watching Queer in Alberta.
Mwah.
Welcome back to another episode of Queer in Alberta, the podcast where we chat with 2S LGBTQIA+ Albertans from all across the province to share their stories. My name is Kels. I'm a queer Filipino Canadian. I use she, her pronouns, and we film this series right here in Treaty 7 territory in the city of Lethbridge, Alberta, home of the Blackfoot Confederacy, as well as the OT Pimswak Métis government in the Alberta District Number 1. Today, we are joined by some extra special guests, and I'm a little biased because they are two wonderful friends of mine that made it from Calgary, and they're representing something called BaklaBayan. So BaklaBayan is a Treaty 7-based queer Filipino performance showcase series created and lovingly produced by artists Lanny and SallieMae. They created the collective to highlight the beauty and intersectionality between Filipino identity and queerness to redefine what it means to be Filipino enough. Lanny, who uses they/them pronouns, is a singer-songwriter who has an affinity for all things honest and heartfelt. Their lyrics are soft and yielding and are deeply rooted in personal experiences. Sally also uses they/them pronouns and is a singer-songwriter and producer with a passion for storytelling through their sweet melodies and intentional words. BaklaBayan, welcome to the show.
Hello.
Hi. Very soft, very chill. Just hi.
Hi.
So happy to have you here in Lethbridge, but also to get to hang out with two such good friends on the podcast.
Yes, this is exciting.
It's very exciting. How did we all meet? Just for some background here.
So I messaged you on TikTok.
As we do.
Over 2 years ago, I think now.
Isn't that crazy? Is it our anniversary?
It's wild. Yeah, I was like, hey. Because it was your TikTok where you're like, hey, I am on the radio. And I'm like, that's pretty cool.
Hey,
Hey, Kels, my name's Lanny. I do this thing. I'm an artist, so we should do the thing. And
we should do the thing.
Yeah, and then we just did a thing, and then we hung out after. And then, it was just from there.
It was destiny.
Yeah,
it was love at first sight.
Exactly, yeah. And then, I invited you to Sally's gig, and then you brought the whole group, and then we just been talking ever since.
Yeah. Totally. And you actually ahead of me a second because I was going to say, for folks that are listening and not watching the podcast, can we do a quick, hi, I'm Lanny, hi, I'm Sally, just so they know who's who?
Absolutely. Hi, I'm Lanny.
Organic. We love it.
Yes.
And I'm Sally.
There we go. And Lanny, you've been around Southern Alberta before because you used to live in, was it Colehurst?
Okotoks.
No, but before when you were really little.
Oh, Claire's home.
Claire's home.
Yeah.
That was it. So you're familiar with the landscape. And Sally, you've been here a bit, but what is the quick impression of Lethbridge between the two of you? I love the silence. She's good. Deep breaths.
It's a small town.
Just a small town, girl.
Yeah, it has all the things you need.
Does it?
Not a TNT.
No.
Not a TNT, yeah.
Not a TNT. Literally, they were telling me what do you need from the Asian supermarket in Calgary? And I sent you a list. So
yes, and we got you.
You got it. Can't wait. Okay.
Yeah.
So she's a small town with maybe most of the things you need. She's got some charm.
And the train bridge.
And the train
of course,
bridge.
the famous train bridge.
You literally asked me last night, do they still use that?
I don't know.
I was like, nah.
Just for display.
She's just for the prestige. Oh my goodness. Well, again, thank you so much for making the trip down. But let's get into the interview. And our first segment is really fun. It's called Quickfire Queer. And it's new since, new with season 3. So are we ready for it?
Yeah.
Okay. Quickfire Queer is going to be a fruity lightning round with 5 rapid fire questions that you get 5 seconds to answer.
Oh.
I love that.
Stressing already.
Pass.
Okay. Opting out. No, thank you.
Next segment, please.
Yeah. Moving on. I love it. It's your show now. It's your show. But think you can handle it? Are you ready?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Wait, question. Do we answer singular or collective?
Oh, we can make it like a competition. Whoever gets in first, or you can challenge an answer and I'll give you an additional 5.
Okay.
Sound good?
Oh, yeah,
Just do it.
Yeah.
Just go with the flow.
try.
In the moment.
I don't like control. Who likes that?
Live in the moment.
All right, besties. Question number 1. What is the best place in Calgary to grab halo-halo after BaklaBayan?
For convenience,
Mans.
Seafood City. Oh,
Food City and your house? I was gonna say, this is not the first time someone on the show has said my house for an answer on Queer in
Mans.
Alberta. Oh, your aunt's? Is this the restaurant?
It's a Kels.
I can't hear, apparently.
Kels.
so Maan's is
Yeah.
where we held our last showcase. So it's like a smaller, like Filipino restaurant. Yeah.
But wait, isn't it one of your aunts as well owning it?
No.
That is not.
Then that's fake lore.
That's fake lore.
Okay, so that's your number 1 spot for halo halo.
Yeah, Mans is good.
I said Seafood City, but that's just convenience. If You're just like, there's nowhere else to go. Like,
No,
not to rat on Seafood
Got
City.
you, no.
All right, question number 2. If your lives were a Filipino teleserie or soap opera, what would the title be?
I haven't grown up watching them, so.
How unfortunate.
Okay, set the scene. Can you describe what how unfortunate is gonna look
I
like?
just love it because it would just be like, kawawa naman.
Ah!
That would be the title of it.
That's so good. I love it. Somebody get on the branding for
Right.
that. How
That's
unfortunate.
good. That's
It's
good.
gonna be on the PFC next
Yes,
time.
Let's do it.
Okay, question 3. Which Filipino dessert best represents your queer identity?
Oh, okay. How do you pronounce it? Mais Españolo?
That's yours.
Ah,
Españolo.
okay. And then
Mine would just be halo halo because it's just
Halo-halo.
a mix
mix.
Yeah.
of whatever.
So,
Mix.
Mais Españolo is like halo halo, but instead of the mix, like instead of everything, it's just corn.
It's just corn.
It's just corn.
It's just corn.
It's so
Ay, corny.
good. Yeah. No, but it's so good though.
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh my god, Kate, we're literally going for food after this, like specifically Filipino
Yeah.
food.
We have to.
We need to get. Okay.
Mhm.
Question 4. Which Filipino celebrity would you cast as the lead in a queer rom-com? Anybody come to mind?
In my head, I'm like Sam Milby, but he's not relevant. Sorry,
He's
Sam.
not queer also,
He's not
but
queer,
like
yeah.
Okay, canceled.
Yeah, no. Jake Cyrus.
Okay, Jake Cyrus.
Mm.
And then Sally, do you
Melinda
have one?
Vega.
Melinda Vega. She was just here in
Yes.
spirit, and
Yeah.
she would eat. She would absolutely eat.
Jake Cyrus and Melinda Vega.
I want to see
Honestly,
that.
though-
How unfortunate.
Okay, but like in the past life, Sunshine, what's her face from Glee?
Oh, Sunshine
Wait.
Corazon.
Yeah.
Okay, wait,
Yeah.
what isn't that? Isn't that? Yeah,
Yeah,
Jake Cyrus.
Jake Cyrus.
Yeah, yeah,
In the
yeah,
past
yeah.
life.
There we
In the
go.
past
That's okay.
life. Okay, final question. Are we ready?
Yeah.
Yes.
If you could name a Jollibee menu item after the queer community, what would it be?
Chicken Joy.
Oh, because queer joy.
Yeah.
Enjoy, and then you?
Pineapple juice. 'Cause
Pineapple
we're fruity.
juice. And it's a little, it's got a little
it's
spice
popular.
in that
It's
one. I love it. Well done. That was your quickfire queer. You survived.
Yeah.
Did we?
Yeah, you survived in one piece. How unfortunate.
How
Yeah.
unfortunate.
I'll go home now.
I want to go.
Yes, and you know what? We already talked about first impressions of this city, and I feel like Lethbridge is really going to love this great tourism representation we've got here.
Mhm.
But are we going to see more of you in Lethbridge? I hope so. Maybe for Pride? Question mark.
Yeah.
Let's manifest
I
it.
mean, like you live here, so I'll probably
Also
be down.
that.
Yes,
Recommendation.
that does help.
I feel like, yeah, like as an artist, I'd love to expand
Yeah.
to other parts of Alberta.
Take over the world.
Mhm.
One small
One
town
small
at a
town.
time.
Alberta first.
Yeah,
And then
absolutely.
we'll go.
Alberta first. That feels a little like the other side of the political spectrum.
I know, right?
Alberta first.
I think Alberta needs just a little bit of joy right now.
Yeah,
I
especially
agree.
everything going on.
And a little bit of shaking it up to be like, what is happening? Because I've had moments where I'm like performing and people are like, I didn't expect that. It's like because I look like this. Or
Yes.
Like...
Yes, and like that so relates to I think a lot of this larger conversation about representation
Oh,
of
yeah.
who's Albertan, who's queer, like kind of changing things up and broadening it up.
Mhm.
But we're talking about BaklaBayan, the yearly show that the two of you co-host in Calgary.
Yep.
Now, as a title, for those that aren't familiar, BaklaBayan is a really clever and queer play on two Filipino words,
Yep.
bakla and balikbayan. For folks outside of our bakada, can you tell listeners and viewers what BaklaBayan means and represents?
Mhm.
So bakla it was way back when a derogatory term for
Yeah.
queer, gay. So we kind of wanted to take that, and then Balikbayan is kind of a thing that we do where we send home care packages So we like
Mhm.
go to Costco or whatever, and then like send them a whole bunch of like products that it's hard to find in the Philippines or super expensive. Then we send them back home like a little care package.
It's not a little.
No,
though.
it's not little.
She's,
Okay.
she's
They're-
It's like over
iconic.
100 pounds. It's like
Wrapped in tape.
Yeah,
a
like,
lot of tape. Yeah.
Yeah.
So it's like it's like a care package. So we kind of wanted to make that into like a care package for the queer Filipinx
Love it.
community here in 37. So
yeah. Is there anything else you want to add to that,
Yeah,
Sally?
please
Yeah, and then bayan
yeah.
means
Mhm.
like it can mean town, city, like just
Mm.
a place.
Yeah.
So BaklaBayan, it's such a huge play on words.
Yeah.
so, like,
I love it.
Queer
Too much.
town care package. So it's
Yeah.
just kind of that. That's what it
Yeah.
encompasses.
They got that big brain thinking over there.
Yeah,
They
right?
got
Honestly,
layers to this.
This happened in a group chat with
Yeah.
like it was like us and
Kim
then
Mortal.
Kim Mortal and their
Tin
partner
Lorica.
and Tin, and we were
Yeah.
just like,
Love.
what should we name it? And like Kim and Tin were very busy, and I was like,
Mhm.
why not BaklaBayan?
Yeah. They're like, okay, fine.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and like let's
that's
take a second to shout out Commortal in case
Yes,
folks
please.
don't know who
Yes.
they
Yeah.
are. Fantastic
Yes.
Filipinx artist in Vancouver, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Vancouver. Yeah, and
Yeah.
then Tin Lorica, their partner, is also a comedian from Calgary. So
Mhm.
check them out too because they are so funny.
Yes.
Too
Shout
funny.
out.
Yes,
Yeah. Shout outs,
absolutely.
yeah.
And you know, this is is it the third year of co-producing that we're going into, or the
We're
what
going into
year?
the fourth. I think,
Fourth
yeah.
year.
Fourth
Okay. So successful. We love to
Yes.
see it. And like I
Mhm.
think even this last one that happened in the fall,
Mhm.
your ticket sales were done in like a
Less
day.
than a day.
Right?
Day,
12
yeah.
hours,
So
yeah.
that shows that people are loving what you're doing. There's a hunger
yeah.
for it. And
Mhm.
now, where did the idea, though, come for this queer all Filipino showcase?
Well, fun story. So way back when the first BaklaBayan was actually, I was helping Kim Mortal create a show here.
Right.
Because they were coming, pretty much doing like a little tour area. So they came to visit. Like, okay, I'll help you set up a show. Then it was like the concept from there was awesome because I was like,
Yeah.
yeah, like queer Filipinx, awesome. So the second year happened, and yeah, I just wanted to kind of carry on, especially creating a space for folks in the diaspora. You know, like
Yes.
second gen. Also, I'm Cambodian and Filipino, so
Yeah.
like a lot of mixed race folks and kind of just encompassing like folks who are in the intersections and being told that we're not Filipino enough for Filipino spaces. So having to
Mhm.
create that and just having that that care.
I love
into it.
that. What
Yeah.
about you, Sally?
I think like I had always had this idea. I actually found like the Google Drive document a long time ago.
The
where, like,
archives.
it was an
before
archive where
times.
like it was during COVID, and I was like, what are things that like I want to do to like
Yeah.
kind of connect more with the community? And I was
Mhm.
like, one of the things was like connecting like mainly with like BIPOC musicians, and then like it kind of
Mm.
transformed into like, oh, it'd be cool to like meet more like queer and trans Filipinx folks.
Mhm.
And then yeah,
That'd be
like
cool.
Lanny like messaged me and was like, hey, this is a concept. I'm like, oh my god, that's exactly like what
Mhm.
I want to like be a part of. And so
Mhm.
like ended up like joining as like a performer, and then of course like part of the lore, Lanny and I started dating, and like we just
Mm.
started to kind of like mold this idea and just like expand it, and now it is what it is today.
Wouldn't
Love.
have
which is
been
so
able
cool.
to do it without you though, because yeah,
Aww.
I had the frame, and then Sally helped me put the heart and soul and to build it up.
For
So,
sure.
Mhm.
Well, it's so clear that
Yeah.
it's something that's like a passion project full of
Yeah.
heart and soul from the two of you.
Mhm.
And I didn't realize that because, yeah, if it's 4 years old, you two have been together for not that long, like in like, I think what, 3 years?
Yeah.
Almost?
Almost 3
Almost
years,
3
yeah.
years. Yeah.
And you've been working on this before that. That's cool. That's
Mhm.
really, really cool.
Yeah, that was pretty
Mhm.
cool.
It was
Yeah.
actually the first BaklaBayan when like Lanny didn't realize. I announced it. I was like, oh yeah, this song like my partner really like, or I said something about saying my partner,
Uh-huh.
but like Lanny didn't realize.
No, wait,
that.
no. So here's the story. Here's what actually
Receipts.
happened.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, here's what actually happened. So we were like talking and dating. Like we just started dating.
Oh my God. The
Right?
romance exclusive.
Yeah, exactly. But then, we're both like, oh, let's just take it slow, And
Yeah.
I didn't tell any of my friends yet because I'm like, okay, like, we got to get through this first. And then Sally's like, I don't want to tell anyone yet right now because, like, whatever happens. Because it's just so new.
Okay. Yeah.
And then all of a sudden, Sally goes on the microphone like, yeah, we're partners. I'm like, okay.
Whiplash.
and
You're
then
like,
one
I
of my
guess I
closest-
consent.
Yeah, literally, one of my closest friend, Tet, was like, huh?
I can literally see their face.
Yeah,
Just like, "What?"
literally.
I
though.
know.
Yeah, because I had talked to them about it like maybe like a couple months prior. Like, yeah, Sally and I were talking about like we're just friends, and then
Yeah.
update them at all. and then
No
all of a sudden it was like, yeah, we're
reverse.
partners.
Wow.
Yeah,
I
but-
love that.
Yeah, it
That's
was so good.
funny. I mean, also very on brand for the two of you, though.
Yeah.
Like, I think that's so fun.
How did you know?
How did you know?
Did you know?
I was joking. Yeah.
But you know, I feel that every time I sit down to write a new question or a new episode of Queer in Alberta, I think about how this show has like come so far from like we're talking about the beginnings of something, right?
Yeah.
So I'm really curious, like when you were first dreaming of BaklaBayan together, was that first idea similar to what you have now, or was it really, really different?
I think honestly, it kind of surpassed what I thought it was going to be.
Mm-hmm.
Especially because like, you know, like in spaces like, especially like POC spaces with a lot of generations, like you have your first gens, 1.5 gens, second gens, and like the conflict between the first gens and the second gens mostly, just I guess like culturally, I didn't think it was going to go anywhere because I didn't think that it was enough. Like it was, I didn't think it was valid enough to start, especially being mixed race, right?
For sure.
So yeah, especially like not enough language and like all the barriers that we face for the validation of being ourselves. Yeah, I was it surpassed so much because I met so many people who are like, I didn't know I could be part of this, and it's like, it's so
we've
cool.
had a couple friends who told us like we had invited them, I think it was like the year before, and they're like, I don't know about this yet, and we're like, fair enough. And then we invited them this past year, and like they loved it, and it's just really cool. Like I think like we started off as being like, yeah, this is just going to be a showcase and like we'll do it like once a year and it'll be great. And like now we're like in the works of like, oh, but we want to do more with like connecting now with the community and like really like expanding it, because like we meet these cool people when they come to the event and they're like, hey, this is awesome. And it's like, if it sucks, because then we'll be like, hey, bye. See you next year, maybe.
Yeah.
So yeah, like now we have like so much more motivation just to be like, let's just like hang out. Like let's just
build
connect,
community.
Build community. And especially with our age range, right? Because I feel like in the Filipino community, especially like the queer Filipino community, I feel like a lot of the older queers, like they definitely stick together, which makes sense, right? Because like it was like a journey for them to find each other.
Yeah.
And same goes for us, where it's just like now we're trying to find like our little niche and like grow together as a community.
For sure.
So.
And that would be something to like talk about further, and like I feel like it even a further episode or something, because we think about how difficult it is seemingly for us to find queer Filipino community, but then our Filipino queer elders that like were here, you know, in Calgary in maybe the 80s or something, right? Like I can only imagine how much more challenging that was.
Yeah.
But I wanted to ask you, there was something you said there. It was about how folks were saying like, oh, we're not sure if we want to come, or maybe like not ready yet. Can you tease a bit of like the feeling behind that? Why might that be intimidating?
So from my experience, it's like a lot of it had to do with language,
like as Tagalog or Filipino or whatever
again, like
language.
if you don't know the language, you're not Filipino. Or
yes,
like,
well, we
you
hear
know
that all
what
the
I mean?
time.
Yeah, exactly. So it's like one of those things where it's like, especially like from experiences, past experience as well, like certain spaces where again, like you're an intersection of queerness, of like, you know, racial like ambiguity.
Yeah, totally.
I guess. Yeah, it's just like that. Like a lot of it stems from past experience in toxic households, toxic spaces, toxic parties. So usually when you tell someone, oh, it's a Filipino space, they're like, I don't know, I was bullied by a tita before. Like,
who wasn't bullied by a tita?
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So it's like one of those things where it's kind of like, yeah, like, are you willing to take that risk to come into a space that you're not sure of, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. And I feel like, unfortunately, in a lot of Filipino spaces, like we're seeing, and we are very like welcoming and we're very wholesome people. But there is that underlying like concept of like shame that happens.
We're touching the big stuff today.
Okay.
But it's true, because
Yeah.
it's just like there is that shame of like, yeah, like not being enough and just like worrying about being in that space and being judged.
Totally.
And like that's a hard thing to like get past, especially when it's like your culture. I feel like when it comes to other intersections like queerness, there is kind of a way around it, and I could be wrong, and I'm just speaking from my personal experience, but when it definitely comes to cultural things, like even like Lanny and I, like when we go to spaces, like sometimes we're still like kind of on tiptoes, like oh, like if we say like hello po, like to be kind, and then they start talking to us, and then like we have to break the news of being like
Konti
I
lang
kind of
po.
understand you, but not.
Yeah.
Then there's that kind of like drop of like, oh, you don't know enough, and it's like, well,
exactly.
Yeah, and like that's a whole other tangent that I feel like so many immigrant children, whether first gen, second gen, 1.5, like if you didn't learn your language, there's so many reasons as to why that is. And like in those moments, it kind of feels like a failure of you as an individual, but maybe it's your parents didn't have time or energy to be speaking Tagalog or Ilocano or whatever with you in the household growing up, when they're working all day and then coming home, or maybe you didn't have the resources, whatever. Like it's not as black and white as I didn't care, right?
No, exactly.
And also too, like I hate to say it, but like the school system too, like when you come here,
they don't want you hearing your language at home.
Exactly. And it's one of those things where like our parents didn't teach us our languages because they told us at school you have to speak English.
Exactly. So that you learn it faster or whatever.
Exactly.
It is.
Yeah. So that's the thing that kind of sucks way back when. But you know, like now I love seeing younger folks reclaiming that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So like my 30-year-old like like, oh, hey,
Yay,
I can
yeah.
learn this too.
Well, that's what we do together, right?
Oh,
We're
yeah.
all like, we have 4 words. Let's all exchange
let's
them in the group
try it.
chat
Yeah.
and learn from one another.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think that's
So,
something that, of course, like BaklaBayan is helping to do in
Mhm.
Calgary. But
exactly.
I think what we should do is let's maybe paint a picture here of like if somebody has
Mhm.
never been to a show before,
Mhm.
what are you going to expect? When you buy your ticket, you show up, what is the night going to look like at BaklaBayan?
See, I try to not have I try to encourage people not to have expectations.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
Forget everything I said.
Yeah, no. And the reason I say that is because
Uh-huh.
like again with like Filipino culture, people expect us to be so much. You
The
know what
show,
I mean? They
drama.
They expect everything. At the same time, we are, but we don't have to be. You know what I mean? So like when they show up, it's like people just show up as themselves. Like BaklaBayan is not just divas. It's not just like like what they think Filipinos are, like powerhouses or like whatever. Like, we have
Yeah.
like burlesque, comedy, drag, musicians, and poetry. Like a whole
Yeah.
bunch of other art styles that you wouldn't really associate with Filipino culture.
So it's more than just singing.
It's more than just
just
singing.
yeah.
There is singing, but it's more
And
than
it's
just
good.
that. Oh,
Of course, some
absolutely.
stereotypes are correct.
Yeah, absolutely. And at the same time, it's just more than just like what people paint us as.
Yeah.
you
Yeah.
know?
And I
For
think
sure.
like one of the things that we like, and like this year especially was really good. Like it was very like we want people to feel like at home. We want people to feel comfortable.
Which very
and feel safe.
cultural, I feel, that we want
Yeah.
people to feel that way.
Absolutely.
And then this year, thankfully, we also wanted people to be fed.
Yeah.
So from the years to
Yes.
come, we definitely want our people to be fed.
Yeah, the first 2 years of BaklaBayan, we were actually self-funded. So Sally and I did everything, worked overtime to be able to pay. And back then, I'm not gonna lie, I didn't pay the artists as well as I could. But this year,
Yeah.
thank you to Skipping Stone actually for the micro grants.
Yes.
Big
We were
thank
able
you.
to pay our artists. We were able to feed everyone, and just like made it super fair and awesome. And we didn't have to work like 100 hours.
Well,
so
yeah, and like that's a whole point that
Yeah.
like for any artists or creatives listening, particularly if you're racialized or marginalized, I feel like it just in general in the arts community, it's like this kind of expectation that you give 110% and like almost volunteer your time. It's so important that you are respected and paid what your work is worth.
yeah.
No,
Yeah.
exactly.
Which is hard when things are grant funded, but I really try to encourage that with people that I talk
Absolutely.
to.
Yeah.
But we're talking about the show and we mentioned how popular it is. I really want to know what is some of the feedback from audiences that have come and been really excited about this.
The main thing this year was a bigger space.
Bigger space.
Yes,
Which we
okay.
totally understand. Like
Yeah.
we definitely like in hindsight wish we could have accommodated to more people because we had a long wait list.
We had like 30 people on the wait list.
Yeah.
Isn't that crazy?
Yeah, and we had
Yeah.
like a 50 capacity, which was like the second year we did it, we had like maybe 40 people show up, which was awesome, but like 80% of that was door sales.
Okay.
So
okay.
we were like, okay.
Mhm.
Yeah, but this year like sold out in less than a day.
How did that feel for the two of you?
We were like,
It was
what?
wild. I woke up and like checked like the Eventbrite like organizer
Ding,
thing,
ding,
and I was
ding,
like,
ding, ding.
"What the heck?" I was like,
Because we
"There's
had-
only one left."
Am I
Really?
famous?
Yeah, exactly. And also too, like we had made graphics to be like 50% sold out. Blah, blah, blah.
Uh-huh.
And we
And you
didn't
didn't
end up
even need
actually, we didn't even need them. We're like,
We
oh,
didn't
sorry.
even need them.
Yeah.
I was like, "Blur that out, sold out."
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Yeah, so hopefully this year we can accommodate to more people. And
Yes.
I think
Yeah.
that was like the main.
Yeah, that was the main
feedback,
thing, that
yeah.
more people wanted to come because a lot of people from last year weren't really quick on the draw, so they
Yeah.
didn't get to come again this year. But yeah, we also live streamed it a little bit just to kind of like help with some of the overflow that wanted to be there. But yeah, it was super fun, super cool. I really liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it must feel like, wow, because it's so hard to create something from nothing. And I'm not
Yeah.
saying like there weren't Filipino queer spaces in Calgary before. You two would know better than me, like growing up there and living there.
Yeah.
But it's still like you created something new. And so to do that, it takes a lot of energy. It doesn't always work. So you should feel incredibly proud of this success. And I hope you
Yeah.
do.
Yeah, it's good. And it's also like wanting to build a foundation. So if any other folks like want to build their own thing,
Yes.
we can help. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? Like we're all about networking, and BaklaBayan also just kind of started as like a networking, like meet other Filipinx folks, help each other out, you know, in the community space. Like at least we have a platform. So like any artists, any performers or anything, like we're able to share
Yes.
and just like be there for each other. And again, there's no expectation because a lot of folks, it's like a transactional thing. But for us, I kind of want to reclaim the utang ng loob. Like no one's indebted for anything.
Oh no.
You know what I mean? Like you just
Reclaim it, because sometimes it can be used in a bit of like a shameful and
absolutely.
too far debt context.
Oh yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
No,
Which-
it's like sorry.
Actually, can we
no,
explain
I was just
that
gonna say
maybe?
because like utang na loob is like like I would say it's a very toxic kind of mentality that a lot of Filipinos have.
Which immediately is like controversy amongst Filipino Canadians versus Filipinos, generations.
Yeah. But it's
absolutely.
basically like, it's kind of like you're indebted. Like there's like a debt that you
can
have
never be repaid.
that can't be repaid, or that it's just like, it's always assumed that like, yeah, like transactional, if you do something for me, I do it for you. If I'm giving you money, like I expect that like you have to do this for me. If I like do a kind thing for you, you have to be ready on call. Like it's just one of those things that like, and it can be very frustrating because it's just like that concept of like, oh no, like the respect is just like it automatically has to be there, but it's like, no, like that has to be earned. Like a lot of this has to be earned. It's not like a transactional thing. It has to be something, like it has to be more of a conversation. It can't just be like, because you're Filipino, you have to be like this, you have to do this for me. Like that's not it.
Community work is great, and also too like I like the aspect of helping community and all that stuff, and at the same time you don't owe all your success to one thing. You know what I mean? So it's one of those things where it's like, yeah, like they helped you on your feet, but you still had to do the work to get there. So like all the stuff that you've done, like claim it, and also like know where you come from, but again, like you don't owe anyone anything. You know,
this is literally like healing for Filipinos growing up in Canada and trying to figure all of this kind of stuff out, right?
It's also unspoken too, and that's why we have a lot of trouble asking for help in our community, because they don't want to be indebted, you know, but it's like, but if you don't have that expectation for someone, then I feel like more people would be open to leaning on each other, but right now we're still working on that. So.
And it's so interesting because I totally agree with what you're both saying in the sense that like, even though we are pointing out the things that can be problematic about this like kind of cultural concept we have, we are all, I think, just like by the way we were raised, like so giving, and like I would go to the end of the earth for you. Like all this kind of stuff. It's just natural from day one, the way that we've kind of had this relationship.
Absolutely.
Yeah. But again, thinking about BaklaBayan, I think we've got a pretty good picture of it now, but I really wanted to talk about how like you're creating Filipinx spaces in Calgary and the desire to, let me see. It's actually a desire that I recognize within this own show, like Queer in Alberta, creating more spaces for our community here, I guess, in podcasting media. But I think many of us who seek to do that for our intersecting identities can really call back to when we were younger and maybe not having that representation or spaces to express all that we are, right? So I want to know more about before BaklaBayan and what it was like for younger Lanny and Sally growing up queer and Filipino in Southern Alberta.
You want to go first?
Yeah, take it away.
Oh, okay. So when I was younger, I came out at a very young age. I came out at 14. And back then, especially, again, like I'm Filipino and Cambodian. So there's like two different tolerances for queerness. But back then I had to choose between my queerness and my culture. And
which is familiar.
Right? And back then, with the cultural aspect of it, my queerness was safer. You know what I mean? So again, like you can be like a POC in the queer space. It's different, a little challenging, again, with like racism and all that BS. But at the end of the day, I was accepted, right? But as like growing up, we don't really talk about queerness, and especially like the early like 2000s, right? 2010 or whatever, when it was just starting to like get popular. And
so you're saying that, if I'm understanding you right, to be like out within the queer community in Calgary, even like racialized and as a POC, was easier than to be queer within your own specific communities and culture.
And again, like as a musician, there's like the song that I have called Stranger, and it's like feeling like a stranger in my own home. Like I'm here, but I'm not like the living room isn't a shared space, you know what I mean? So it's kind of like that, where there's always going to be aspects of you that you have to hide to be accepted within, you know? So
I even I'm sorry, I was just gonna say I even relate to you on that, because it took a long time for me to come out to my family, like my titas and everybody, and in some ways I still haven't, but I feel like it's a bit unique for me because they're so far away that I don't see them all the time. But I felt that fear of like, I don't want my queerness to change or alter the love that I have from these people. Because, for me, with being biracial, I am so close to my nanay and like that side of the family. The idea of that relationship changing was terrifying when I was first coming out. But Sally, what about you?
I grew up in Calgary all my life, and I'm a late bloomer when it comes to coming out as queer. But like growing up,
wait, what does that mean though? When did you come out, late bloomer?
Well, I came out to myself in high school, but I didn't publicly technically come out.
That's okay. I've had people on here that be like 55.
Oh,
You know, you're
true.
good.
I didn't
Yeah.
publicly come out to my family until 25.
Okay.
And then I came out to my friends as I was growing up in my 20s.
Yeah.
But yeah, like growing up, I was surrounded by Filipino culture. Like most of like my mom and most of my dad's family's here and some of my mom's family's here. So like with my dad's side, we were very close and like we would always have like family parties together. Like my mom had like TFC, so like we'd watch that. And
Love.
like growing up, I didn't have the Tagalog like down like under my belt because of like, you know, like with going into school and like them being like, oh, like they shouldn't learn a second language. So like I kind of had to relearn it as I was watching TFC with my mom, which was great.
Yeah.
Like teleseries, YYC, like all of that stuff. And so yeah, so I had that connection, which I'm very grateful for. And then the older I got, like it wasn't until like I started going into like, you know, junior high school when you're like gaining a personality, going through puberty.
Okay.
And just
download,
like,
let's go.
Right? And just like being around like other cultures and other folks. And like I used to live in Northeast Calgary. So like very diverse, like had a lot of Filipino friends. And then when I moved to the Northwest, it was kind of like this weird transition of like, oh my gosh, like I am the only like person of color here. But then again, like I think just given the part of like the city that I lived in, like I lived in Panorama Hills, and like it was one of those things. There was like this migration of like Filipinos. Literally, it was like Filipinos from like the Northeast and like other cultures as well. But like, of course, like I associate myself with a lot of Filipinos. Like they would go from the Northeast. So all these people I was friends with in the Northeast schools, all of a sudden were popping up in these Northwest schools.
Well, that's nice.
So it was really cool. And it was like this weird balancing act of like, we're all Filipino, we're all here together, but we're in like this predominantly white school. So it was like this contrast of like, are we going to stick with our culture, or are we going to kind of like lean more towards like, you know, the culture here to fit in? And like I, you know, like in my formative years, I unfortunately leaned the other way where I think
so many of us did that, right?
Yeah.
Like I feel the same kind of guilt about it now, like because you have hindsight, you know, and you learn better, all those sorts of things. But it's really interesting to hear you talk about that experience in Calgary, which is so much bigger than where I came from. Because I remember like, you know, obviously you're noticed as different when you're predominantly in a white school and you're racialized. But then same thing, like how much of myself can I be? And what if I just try to be like everybody else? Yeah.
No, exactly. So like, queerness didn't really come into the picture for me until high school when like
What was your queer awakening? I'm just curious.
I started going on Tumblr.
Oh my God, lesbians unite.
It was like, I think it was like grade 7 or 8, like 2007, 2008. Like,
Diva, Tumblr got us all. Like, come on.
I was just gay.
You were just gay, period.
Yeah. You just
Bam.
knew yourself.
Yeah.
That's funny. You didn't need Tumblr.
Yeah, I was just exploring different media and just
exploring.
Like, literally, and just like learning about things. I grew up Catholic and I did Catholic school K to 12.
Here we go.
And of course,
That's
like, you know, like once they start
Yeah.
talking about like, what's it called?
Jesus.
Well, we called it family life, which
Okay.
technically it was sex ed, but
Yeah.
of course they don't want to say the word sex.
Ooh.
Very controversial.
Segs.
But like as we were getting closer to high school and like hearing about these things about like, oh, people are starting to have sex, people are starting to do these things. I'm like, what is this stuff? And so even just like, and like I will say she is kind of controversial now, but like Lacey Green was one of the people that I did like watch a lot of her YouTube videos and like learn
Green.
terminology.
I'm just gonna, for my own curiosity,
Yo,
Lacey
Can I
Green, who's
add on to
that?
the YouTube when I was younger? It was like lesbian answers.
Yeah, lesbian answers. I didn't
Yeah.
actually watch that one, but yeah, Lacey Green was like the one person.
Wow. Okay, I see this person's face on my computer right now, and it's familiar, but I can't remember any videos. Okay.
So she did a lot of like, it was sex ed, and then also she talked a lot about different definitions at the time. So like, she was the first person I heard the word bisexual, and I was like, what is
You were in
that?
Family Life, and you're like, yeah, Lacey.
Yeah,
Green,
literally, I
on
was
YouTube.
I was like, YouTube, this is like the best source, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, like it was like interesting to have that door open and like be curious about it, and then start to notice more about like looking back on like the way that I acted or the way that I treated like a lot of my friends who were girls, being like, was that friendship? Was I into them? And then just like questioning it all and like being like just being more curious. So yeah, and then college hit, and that's when I was like,
uni, here we
bye.
go.
Moved away from Calgary, like had my own freedom too, and like
Yeah.
autonomy. Like,
Where
that
did
was
you
the first
go?
time. I went to Selkirk College in Nelson.
Right.
BC.
Yes, Nelson. Okay.
So, which is like a weird place to
I was
kind
gonna
of
say,
have.
what's it like being queer in Nelson, BC?
It's fun. Like, I mean, it's like a small hippie town, and you just have
Okay.
like it's
The
like
other
a
side of
mishmash.
Lethbridge.
Yeah, you have a mishmash of like the small town people from like BC, the big socialites from like Vancouver, and then like
cosmopolitan.
and then like one or
Yeah.
two people from like Alberta.
Where you?
Which
Yeah.
me, I
Which
was
was
one
me,
of two.
Diva. Yeah.
But it was interesting, yeah, like just like again, like and then interacting with other people and hearing them say like, oh yeah, I'm gay, I'm this, I'm that, and I'm
Yeah.
like, oh my god.
Just so free.
Copy paste.
Yeah. It was mainly like when like women I met started talking about gayness, because like I had been surrounded by like gay men all my life. Like
Yeah.
that was like one of those
Yeah.
things, and it's interesting. Like we have a different
Yeah.
contrast, because
I
I
was-
was surrounded by a lot of gay men, so that was normal to me. and
Like
that's what I was
Filipino
used
gay
to.
men, or
like mixed, like
Yeah, okay.
like yeah, mixed.
No, I was in the lesbian scene.
I was in the lesbian.
I was in the
Let's hear
lesbian
your
scene.
story.
Oh yeah, no, like 14 coming out, like Camp Firefly had a huge role in like getting introduced into like the big community.
Yeah, big respect.
And then I met one of my closest friends, Tet. In
Love
the city.
Ted.
Yeah, Tet is like literally like my parents. Like,
That's it.
yeah, I've been friends for over like 12 years now, and just little baby queero, and we were the only POCs at camp again, the
Yeah.
white space.
Classic.
And I was like, "Are you Filipino?" And they're like, "Yeah, yeah, yeah, I'm Filipino."
You
I'm
have the
like,
same haircut,
"Sick."
like
Yeah, no, actually, they had their head shaved that year, and I had like my little Bieber, like yeah, pretty much, yeah. And then I started
love
getting,
that.
because I was always into music. I was doing mostly covers back then, and
Yeah.
then started performing more, and then got gigs from Firefly like, outside. And then from there, kind of did my music career, and
Yeah.
I was in a lot of queer spaces, which was awesome.
Yeah.
And then especially being in like small town like Okotoks-ish, I was getting a lot of traction there, going to the city, doing my thing there, and so it was mostly like the space I was in was mostly like queer women, a lot of like non-binary folks,
Yes,
not
yeah.
a lot of like cis men or like gay men. It's just more of like the more feminine and just like androgynous spaces.
Which I think is, from at least my experience
Yeah.
and like a lot of the stories I've heard on this show, kind of rare. It seems like a lot of people's introduction to queer is through like queer men. Like the
Yeah.
spaces are run by queer men, or it's
Yeah.
queer men kind of like whether in the arts community or what. Like here in Lethbridge too, there's something called Theater Outre, which is really great in the sense it's the first like queer theater here in Lethbridge for like, I don't know, 10 years maybe or something. But same thing, like I remember first coming out here in the city and it was like spaces dominated by gay men.
Yeah.
Which it's not necessarily a problem. That's not what I'm trying to say. But I'm really noticing just right away how different that experience is. And I'm
Oh, it's
like
amazing.
very jealous.
Yeah, you should be, because it was great. No, it was no, it
I'm
was
so jealous, Diva.
no, for real. It was so great. Like, yeah, like every space is problematic, and at the same time, it was just like a different, again, like just different type of energy.
Well,
You know
yes,
what I mean?
absolutely.
Yeah.
We can kiki
Yeah.
like within the community, but it's
Yeah.
important, like for the same reason BaklaBayan is
Yeah,
important for
exactly.
Filipino queer spaces, to have spaces for sapphics and for lesbians. and
Absolutely.
for- yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, so feeling safe is nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But can I ask you both really quickly?
Absolutely.
And feel free to, like, if it's not a comfy question, let me know. But did you both come out as non-binary or did you have multiple coming out?
No. So way back
Yeah.
when, being like as a kid, and even if you saw photos of me, like
Yeah.
I would just say I was a lesbian. Like I was a girl, but like I wasn't. You know what I mean? I was
yeah.
always wishing I was a boy, but
I
like
mean,
didn't
same.
want to be a boy. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I did like the whole like lesbian to non-binary, and I didn't know that there was an option. You know what I mean? I didn't know there was an option. I'm
Option
sorry.
three.
Yeah. Like my parents don't speak English well. They're not gonna be like they them. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? Yeah.
Yeah.
Like the
Yeah,
first
yeah.
time my mom, like my mom's Filipino, and she always mixes up her he's and she's.
Well, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
Because in our languages,
Yeah.
we don't have gendered pronouns in
Yeah.
the same way.
Exactly. Yeah. So she'd mix up her he's and she's, and my dad would always get so mad. Like, he this, she this, what is it? And then the first time she used my pronoun correctly, my dad was like, how many? And I'm like, all right.
Yeah. Inclusion.
Yeah, exactly. You know, she's trying though.
Yes.
Yeah. But no, I always knew that was not like a woman. And even now I still kind of like am scared in some spaces where it's like it's the energy I give off too, where like you look and you see me and you're like, what's that?
What's that?
What's
What's that, bro?
Yeah, exactly. And then that's okay, you know what I mean? But yeah, like
that's
so,
kind of euphoria for
yeah,
you.
absolutely. Yeah, it was she, her to she, they to they, them.
Yeah.
And now I'm just they, them.
Yeah. And like Sally, I want to ask you about this too, but really quickly here, just while we're chatting with Lanny, I wanted to ask a little bit because I feel like 10 years ago or so, even for like people within the community, bisexual was like more known than pan or even non-binary identities.
Yeah.
So I have kind of two questions here that are on my brain. One, like, how was it that you found the language to realize like, oh, non-binary, that fits me? And then with the context of like, again, our language is she, he, we don't have it in the same way. It's sila or siya, right?
Yeah.
So how was it trying to explain to your parents that actually they, them is how I feel most at home?
So I do still get she, her at home just because, you know, parents, and I do have more grace and compassion for folks. Again, like nothing's going to change overnight, especially in a system where, you know, this is like he or she and that's it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I'm just trying to tell, like sometimes when my dad like she's me a lot, I'm like, no, like I just like, no, like I don't want to.
Tolerance level hit.
Yeah, exactly. I don't want to do it. Yeah. But yeah, so like for the languaging part, I went to Camp Firefly.
And that's where you kind of...
And that's where I kind of had that awakening of, I don't have to be a girl. You know what I mean?
Dude, this is why these resources are so
And honestly,
important.
it was so great because, yeah, like I came out as queer or as like a lesbian at 14 and I thought I could only be this type. So, you know, like the L word lesbian that like people...
With the,
Yeah, so
Shane.
that's, literally though. So like
we
that's...
look the same, don't we?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, the dumb snapback that didn't... You know what I mean though? You have like...
I feel represented.
Wait. But here's the thing, like the V-neck shirt with like the basketball shorts. You know what I mean?
I do.
Yeah.
Like in that stupid photo of me from like Disneyland and...
I was there too.
That's podcast
I was there. Yeah, I was there.
Kels put the photo in.
Exactly. No, but yeah, like I was like so confused and like how to be. But then I went to Camp Firefly and they just kind of expanded the ranges of like the genderbread person.
You're
and
like
they're
the
like
fourth person that said Camp Firefly.
And honestly though, so way back then in high school, I usually took summer school for math. But the last year I was in high school, I was like, do I complete my math course or do I be gay? And then I chose the gay camp.
Was it even a question?
No, exactly. So I chose the gay camp and it changed my life in terms of like being able to be with myself. You know what I mean?
And to have the space probably.
Absolutely. Right? Yeah. Mm-hmm. Like patience and yeah, just I learned how to just like be and be open with folks with that.
Yeah.
So super helpful, especially as like a younger kid, because there was kids there who were younger than me, which is like awesome.
Yeah.
So yeah.
And I feel like in this moment, you're really illustrating for people, because I feel like people that aren't aware of queer or like have queer friends or really in the know, I kind of feel like there's this rhetoric of like they're so tired of hearing about you need this space. Like, why do you need yada yada yada?
Oh no, because I'm alive.
As I'm alive.
And the fact is, some kids without spaces who are able to just let them be, they won't be. You know what I mean?
Yeah. You need that space to be able to like consider those possibilities or encounter them. Period, for the first time.
And like I've talked to some parents of like friends of mine who, and you can cut this out if it's like a little too explicit, but it's like okay, but like with pronouns and being transgender, would you rather have a happy son or a dead daughter? That's totally up to you. You know what I mean?
And it is that like serious.
It is true. You know? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. No, I really appreciate you naming that, because especially with what's going on in the world,
absolutely,
it's something that I want to shed light on. Like, it's not like, even if it is extra care, like extra something, look at the positive that it brings to people's lives.
Exactly. Like I've met kids who wouldn't speak 2 words and then finally came out as themselves or used the right pronouns or people acknowledging them as the right name, and they just won't shut up respectfully. You know what I mean? And but like that's the joy of it,
and look
you
at
know?
That. It's like a blooming. Right?
Absolutely. Yeah.
I love that. Speak on that for a moment. That is huge for affirming care.
Yeah.
Yes, thank you for all of that. I do want to make sure we have time for Sally.
I was going to say,
because you came out as non-binary relatively recently, hey?
like 2 years ago?
2 years ago?
So do you mind sharing a bit of that journey? Because I feel like, you know, Filipino queer representation is one thing, but also like for non-binary and trans identities, I think it's important too.
Yeah, like my pipeline was...
My pipeline?
Was my
the year was
pipeline.
1834.
It was the bisexual, pansexual, oops, people don't know what pan is, bisexual,
Ping pong.
pansexual
Here we
again, and then non-binary.
Yeah. A journey.
It was a journey.
And you made it.
Yeah. And then the she, her, she, they.
Yep.
They, them. Eventually they, them. Yeah, like, I think, so it was in my previous relationship where, like, and it was my very first, like, WLW relationship, and I was like, "This is great, like gay,
so sorry, Lanny's
thriving."
being naughty.
Yeah, right.
If you saw that on camera, no, you didn't.
No, you didn't.
Just blur that out.
Continue.
Yeah, sorry.
But yeah, like, so in that relationship, you know, like that was when I started to see, because like when you're in a relationship with a man, the gender roles are there, and you're just kind of like, oh, like
for sure.
there can be times where you can step a little bit outside of the box, but like, actually, no, I can do this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it was so different being with another woman and just like realizing that it's just like, wait, like we're kind of going through these same habits of like at least like from like my perspective, I felt like I was like, oh, like there's still this structure, but this structure doesn't feel right. Like there's times where it's like I want to be a little more masculine or do more masculine things, or especially for me, it was like the way I presented myself. Because I felt like, looking back on it, I felt like I like really like hyper feminized myself, and I did that a lot
in
like,
that relationship.
And also just all my life. I was like, I need to be this because I need to be this in order to be appreciated for who I am. But
also,
it's like,
my theory is that comes a little bit from being Filipino, and maybe that's just me, but like I felt such a pressure to look a very specific way, long hair, like Vanessa Hudgens-esque, like curls, all that kind of stuff.
Dude.
That was the
It's like
era.
the side base.
you should see my high school photo.
That is my high school photo. It is.
Copy paste.
Literally, we'll put it right here. The two of us.
I'll find mine.
I'll put mine at the bottom.
But yeah, it was so different being in that kind of relationship, and then then like like for me, like experiencing more queer media, and like at least like from my side of it, like opening myself up to more of that, and then realizing that it's just like, wait, but like I don't want to fit into this mold. It's like I came out and like I want to be out, and
what did I come out for?
Right. And it's like what do I want to represent? Like how do I want to represent myself? And at that time I was like, this isn't me. One of the things that was like tough about it too was that like my ex is Filipino, and given that she's Filipino, like she had a lot of family. I unfortunately didn't really get to meet them either, and that was also something that was on the back of my mind, that I'm like, I need to present a certain way so that once I do get that opportunity, like they're not going to be like, oh,
or too much of a shock.
Like that is too much of a shock. Like I want it to be like palatable almost, which was like like a self-fulfilling prophecy, trying to be that and trying so hard to be something that I'm not, that I ended up crashing and burning, and then like having to start from scratch and be like, okay, like now that I'm in a clear state of mind, now that I'm away from that, and I can just be like, what do I want to take from that?
Yeah.
And, like, how can I be? And like that's when I started my gender journey, like when I was single for like a little bit, and then I met Lanny, and then we started talking about like what it means to, because like they're the first they them that I really like had like a connection with, in terms of like just like
Look at them
friendship and just like,
they're like, yeah.
I know, right?
Yeah,
Like
she's
they can take credit. And like I talked about gender a lot with them when like before we were dating. I'm like, this is like different for me, and it's like I don't really understand it. Like I just feel like it's something that's right. And like they were like, honestly, like I want to be here to support you, and whatever questions you have, like just let me know.
Can I add in that one part? So I think it was like our third date.
Yeah.
They were like dressed really cute as always. And they were like, do I look more masculine or feminine today? I'm like, well, you just look like yourself. And that was pretty much yeah.
Cool.
Yeah. No, but for real though, like you were just yourself the whole time, and that was good.
Yeah. And like same thing with Lanny. It's like I think there's just a cultural thing where like you are going to be she heard, and there are going to be times where like I'm okay with it. There are other times where like you can tell like it's just the intention of it. Like I think culturally it's hard to like rewire that and be like, I'm they them, like I'm this. And like like if I get she heard, I'm like, it's for me personally, I can handle it. It's just with other people, if they're intentionally being like she, then like that's when I'm like, okay, like shut up. Like
it's when they he me, that's when I have a problem. I'm like, oh really?
That one's weird.
Patriarchy.
When they call me ma'am and they call them sir, I'm like,
what? I'd rather be she than he, unfortunately. Rather she than he, because of the hate I have for the patriarchy. And also the harm that's been done by men. Like to me, I don't want to be perceived as that.
For sure. And again, I feel like it's almost like I'm presuming this is happening around straight people too.
Oh, absolutely.
Maybe like at a restaurant or whatever. It's like, again, seeing relationships and couples and being like, which one fits the masculine, which one fits the feminine. And that's something that queer relationships I've always loved, where it's like there is no masculine and feminine, or maybe there is if that's what you love, but it's not always 100% of the time.
We used to play a game with the waiters to see who they put the bill in front of.
Oh my God. Sarah and I do this, but for me it's just big energy. I'm like, they're gonna give it to me.
No, most of the time. But one time that one lady was like,
One time
and then
when she walked away, I'm gonna get the machine. We're like, oh.
Yeah.
Wow,
Yeah,
angel
that's
singing,
great.
gender affirmed.
I know, for real. I'm like, getting me dinner. Okay. Yeah.
But I want to, this is a spontaneous question that I want to ask the two of you really, really quickly. And it's for me, like, I have always felt so at home in my she, her pronouns. And now, like, I'm noticing, and we've talked about this in the past, that I get people coming up to me and being like, what are your pronouns? Are they, them? Or like if they're introducing me as like a speaker or something, they say they. And it's not with malicious intent or anything like that. But I find it so interesting that just because I'm not dressing, as we've been saying, traditionally feminine or whatever, that immediately the assumption is they, them. But what I want to ask you about is like, for me throughout my 20s, I've realized that I feel really fluid with how I present my gender through style. So like some periods of my life, I'm very, very feminine in that traditional sense. And others, we've got the shorter hair, we've got this jacket, the whole vibe. So I've kind of been struggling where I'm like, it's not that I feel non-binary, but I've been hearing a little bit more about like gender fluidity, period. And like, have you met anybody that's maybe still using she, her pronouns, but identifying as gender fluid because of how they express themselves?
100%, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Okay, because this is like something I've been like, is that, I don't want to like occupy a space that isn't for me without understanding it. And it's not like I'm looking for another term, but I've even noticed like in TikToks and stuff, I'm like style fluid or something as like ways to say it without saying it, because it does resonate a bit of how I feel, but I'm always still a woman at my core.
Absolutely. And I feel like too, gender expression doesn't really tie you to the gender identity. You know what I mean? Expression is just expression on how you, like, I know a lot of folks like who like go by he, him, but are fucking stylish as fuck. You know what I mean? So yeah, again, like expression and identity is two different things.
Okay. Yeah.
Right? So that's just how I kind of look at it.
And I think at the end of the day, it's just what feels true to you. Kind of like
absolutely.
what Lanny was talking about with like when I started coming more to terms and at home with like who I am. It's just like understanding that it's like there's always going to be this perception. And I think at the end of the day, like how you feel to yourself and how you present to yourself is what matters. And then with the pronoun thing, it's just like for folks that like are in that place where like I don't know what to use. It's like just like just like a quick question,
right.
just like, oh yeah, like what can I, like what pronouns do you use, and then just go from there. Because it's better. It is better to assume, because I know like I have the tendency to just like default to they, and that's just like with my experience. But like like I recognize too that it's just like no, we need to like take a step back first and like just be like, hey.
What are your pronouns? I hate the question, what are your preferred pronouns? Because like, no, it's what are your pronouns? Yeah, that's where I'm just like,
and it's like, it's such a small thing with language, but you're so right, because preferred pronouns still makes it sound like one is the default and your preferred is like an alternative rather than what you feel home in.
Absolutely.
Right?
And people change every day, and that's fine. You know, so
I really appreciate that, because it's something I've been trying to like take some time to think about, because it's been on my mind for probably about a year now, especially. And like, for again, I don't know if I'm gonna still be dressing exactly like this a year in ahead, but right now it feels good.
Absolutely.
And it feels home. So
yeah, exactly.
Thank you. I really, really appreciate that. But this is your final question for the interview. And I think you're like, finally. But you know, one thing that stands out to me about BaklaBayan is its mission to make space for folks to say, feel Filipino enough, as we've been saying. And this identity barometer, it's not something that's exclusive to Filipino Canadians. I see it in my friends who are racialized, first generation immigrants, or biracial, right, with multiple identities. So why do you two think it's important to encourage folks to feel Filipino enough, and like thinking about how different generations feel about it too?
I think it's important for folks to not just Filipino enough, but to feel enough as themselves, whether that be, you know, like biracial or intersectionalities of gender and race and all that fun stuff. I just think it's super important in itself to just be enough for yourself. Again, like there's like, I forgot who it was, but someone had said for their biracial kids that you're not half and half, you are 100% of each one.
Yeah.
Right. And you are whole no matter what, you know what I mean? So I kind of like take that to heart, where it's like, okay, I'm Filipino and Cambodian. Not one side is more than the other.
Yeah.
Right. But I also share Canadian values because I was born here as well. Right. So it's like, yeah, I just think it's important just to be able to feel enough. And especially the space that we create right now, it starts with Filipino, but later on, again, like you can expand, and again, you find your spaces, right? And this is just like a journey, that step that if you need to take, like you're more than welcome.
Yeah.
Right.
For sure. What about you?
Yeah, I think it's important too. Like, and it's such a like, you know, tale as old as time that we say when we talk about decolonization, right?
Yeah.
It's just like it's just like that idea of like deconstructing like all that like intergenerational kind of traumas, and just like understanding that it's like we can't keep passing on these same cycles down. Like we don't have to always be suffering and like cause suffering to each other. We can just kind of vibe and just like have a good time.
Yeah.
And like that's like one of those ways is to break down those different barriers and break down all those stereotypes and like just break down those concepts of like, in order to be with us, you have to fit in this certain thing. It's like, no, like you can be queer, you can be Cambodian, you can be white, you can be Filipino, but you can still live in our space of BaklaBayan. You can still be here. You can still exist with us. Like the main thing with BaklaBayan was like, of course, we want to highlight these, like highlight all of these talents that like talented people that we know, because it's like they do deserve that stage. They do deserve to share what they can share, and to show that it's like, hey, like this is not something that you may expect conventionally, but this is something that exists. And then rewriting that to be like, oh yeah, like being Filipino, you can do this. You can sing folk music. You can sing indie music. You can be a burlesque performer. You can be a comedian. You can see. You can do some really amazing poetry and
you can be gay.
Yeah,
you can be gay. Yeah, right? It's just like bringing in all of those intersections and just making it normal for people to see that, like quote unquote normal, or like normalize it, where it's just like this is just what it is. So that when people see it, it's just like, oh yeah, like I'm like Filipino and Jamaican. They're not gonna be like, whoa. They'll just be like, oh cool, that's something that exists and that's awesome. So it's just breaking that down, so it's not as much of like a
you were this or that.
You know.
No, I love that answer, and it makes me think. I'm reading The Feminist Killjoy right now, and just in the beginning of the book, they're already referencing Audre Lorde and like the work that she did to pioneer self-care. And like how we think about self-care, it's kind of been co-opted. Absolutely has, is like treat yourself, whatever, but it has its roots in like marginalized and racialized communities. Taking care of ourselves is an act of defiance. It's an act of decolonization, because we're taught that our bodies aren't worthy of care by these systems that have been existing long before you and I. We were wrapping up with BaklaBayan, the amazing things that it does for the community in Calgary. Thank you so much for that work that you're doing to support queer Filipinos, to make welcoming spaces, and to share our culture. If you could do me a favor and look into this camera over here and just let the folks listening know where they can find you and when to expect the next BaklaBayan.
Yes.
Can you do it actually?
So you can follow BaklaBayan on Instagram. I think it's just BaklaBayan.YYC. You can also follow Lanny and I on Instagram
if you'd like. Mine is homo is where the heart is 69.
And mine
say it with a straight face.
My Instagram is homo is where the heart is 69.
Love it. And then mine is mae.mamser to fit the they them vibes. And then our next event, depending on when this episode's coming out,
this will be coming out around April. So
hopefully by April we'll be kind of picking up on events. We're wanting to do more community kind of stuff. So if you stay tuned onto Instagram, like we're trying to do more like open mic and karaoke kind of events, just hanging out. We want to eventually do more kind
craft
of like craft nights, dance parties, figuring all that out. But our showcase, like our big BaklaBayan showcase, typically happens in October. So
keep it tuned. October is when you want to watch the tickets. They're going to sell out in a day again. I predict it.
Hopefully we'll have more capacity for that. Yes, because we want everyone to have the chance to experience BaklaBayan.
Definitely. And we're still very early, but we may be manifesting a Queer in Alberta screening / collab with BaklaBayan. So go follow all those social media accounts and stay tuned with everything Lanny and Sallie are doing. You do not want to miss out. All right. Can we get you to look into this camera and say, We are BaklaBayan, and you are watching Queer in Alberta.
Okay. One. Wait, hold on. Okay. Okay. What?
I love this. What is that?
I don't know. You pulled me over.
I did.
Okay.
Should we count you in?
Oh, yeah. Okay.
Okay, ready?
Yeah.
3, 2, 1.
We're BaklaBayan, and you're watching Queer in Alberta.
Thank you. Great job.
Coming up next on Queer in Alberta.
Yes, and of course there was discrimination was allowed at that time, and
Yes.
because the Individual Rights Protection Act, which came in 72, I think, I may have my dates wrong, did not include sexual orientation. So you could discriminate against people like me